This is Bert Trautmann, a remarkable man with a remarkable story.
So Manchester, please welcome your favourite City player of all time, Bert Trautmann.
During his extraordinary life, Bert has been a hero and a villain, a German paratrooper and a celebrated goalkeeper, a prisoner of war and a cultural ambassador. And he is without doubt the only man ever to have been awarded the Iron Cross, the OBE and the title of Footballer of the Year.
Trautmann jumps and pulls the ball down.
It's like a Roy of the Rovers story, except you'd never believe it. If I wrote you a story like that, you'd enjoy it and then say, yeah, okay, that can't happen. But it's happened.
Bert rose to fame as Manchester City's goalkeeper during the 1950s, becoming the stuff of legend when he broke his neck during the 1956 FA Cup final.
Trautmann's down. He's injured.
I knew instinctively that he was badly hurt.
Teammates help Trautmann to his feet. He tells the trainer he's all right, but the crowd can see his neck is hurting badly.
And the crazy thing was, if somebody had smacked him on the back, he could have been paralysed or he could have died on the spot.
Throughout his career as a footballer, Bert's good looks and natural sporting ability brought him a legion of fans, many of them women. And there was drama off the field as well as on it.
I must have been chipping away at Mum saying, "You've got to tell me where I've come from, I want to know." So she sat me down and she told me, "Your dad is Bert Trautmann," and started to think that this was my father. But how do I get to him?
From Hitler Youth to Wembley glory, Bert's incredible story is told by those who know him best. His family, his friends, his fans, and by the man himself.
I've always said my education began in the UK. The way I was treated, fairness, kindness, tolerant, you're a special type of people, you're a special type of island.
Quiet, quiet, quiet. Quiet!
This is the Bert Trautmann Story. Bert was born Bernhard Karl Trautmann in Germany in 1923. It was a time of great political unrest in a country struggling to recover from defeat in the First World War.
We experienced inflation, recession, 7 million people without a job. And of course, there were clashes between political parties and so on. There were times where we couldn't go to school because of fighting on the streets. But it was, frightening, actually, as a young boy.
Despite the troubles, Bert had a happy childhood, growing up in Bremen with his parents and younger brother Karl-Heinz. Then, in 1934, the family adopted Bert's cousin Helga. Still living in Bremen today, Helga has fond memories of the boy she knew as Bernie.
Bernie war erstmal ein sehr hübscher Junge. Die Mädels mochten ihn alle gerne. Und ich auch als Cousine. Er sah aus, groß, schlank, blonde Haare, blaue Augen. Er war ein Strahlemann. Das war ein Strahlemann, der von innen raus leuchtete irgendwie. Und er nahm mich viel in die Arme und knuddelte mich. Und er war auch sehr sportbegeistert.
Sport has been my life, all my life. My father took me to football matches. I was 4 or 5 years of age, and I became an active playing member at the age of 5 years, for the local football club. I played handball, and then I did a lot of athletics. So I was quite an active, sporting person at a very, very young age.
And when the Nazis came to power, Bert was just the sort of boy that Hitler saw as the future of Germany.
In 1933, when the Nazis came to power, Bert was 10, exactly 10. And so he went straight into the Hitler Youth, because all the boys from 10 to 18 had to go into the Hitler Youth. Of course, Bert, with his blonde good looks and his natural athletic talent, he was the perfect Aryan specimen as far as the Nazis were concerned, it has to be said. But he was just a 10-year-old, he knew nothing of that. He just loved the Hitler Youth because it was fun, it was adventure, and it was sport, sport, sport.
People are sometimes stupid and crediting us, being a Nazi, which I think is absolutely stupid at 10 years of age. You have no mind of your own. All you wanted is adventure. Traveling, being intense, learning like Boy Scouts. Of course there was indoctrination, but they didn't reach us all.
By the time he was 15, Bert had finished second in the entire Reich in the long jump, the 60 metres, and grenade throwing. The latter, the ideal achievement for what was to come next. A year after the outbreak of the Second World War, 17-year-old Bert Trautmann volunteered for the Luftwaffe and spent the next 3 years fighting in Russia, first as a wireless operator and then as a paratrooper. Back home in Bremen, his cousin Helga missed him terribly.
Und wie nachher im Krieg eingezogen ist, von dem Tag an habe ich gebetet, jeden Abend, dass gesund wieder nach Hause kommt. Nicht, da habe ich immer für ihn gebetet. Mein Bernie musste wieder nach Hause kommen.
Although initially the Germans made swift advances against the Soviets, conditions on the Eastern Front were terrible, particularly during the winter months, and thousands of German troops froze to death in sub-zero temperatures. Bert suffered from frostbite, which attacked his feet and his ears. But his worst experience came in October 1941, when he and a friend stumbled across the massacre of Jews by a Nazi death squad.
We could see down into this oval, and we saw at the far end women, children, old people, and they shot him. That was my first experience by civilians being shot, children being shot, women being shot, old men being shot. Of course it touched me, of course it hurt me, my feelings were absolutely down. If I would have been a little bit older, I would have probably committed suicide or something like that.
The tide turned for the Germans in Russia after their defeat at Stalingrad in February 1943. From then on, Hitler's armies in the east faced a long and treacherous retreat, during which over 1 million men died. Fortunately, Bert was given unexpected leave, and after the horrors he'd witnessed, this brief return to Bremen and to the sanctuary of home couldn't have come at a better time. His cousin Helga was looking out of the kitchen window as he approached.
Und wer kam da? Meine Mutti hat ihn sofort erkannt. Bernie, komm! Und wir alle Mann ob Nachbarn und hin und ihm entgegengelaufen. Das war eine Freude, da kann ich mich noch unheimlich an erinnern. Und dass ich immer bei ihm stand und immer den Arm um ihn gelegt habe und so weiter, das weiß ich alles noch. Ja, das weiß ich noch.
But by May 1944, Bert was in action again, this time on the Western Front. And in the months following the D-Day landings, he saw action in the Ardennes and at Arnhem. Then in the spring of 1945, Bert's luck finally ran out when he was captured. First by the Americans, who in the chaos of war let him go, and then, as he was making his escape, by the British.
They were surprised, I was surprised, but I stopped dead in my tracks, and they looked at me, and one got up, got hold of me, and the other said, "Oh, Fritz, you want a cup of tea?"
By April 1945, Bert's war was over. But as with any boy's own story, there were still plenty of adventures ahead as he began his new life in England. But just how did this German prisoner of war make it to Wembley glory? Bert Trautmann arrived in England on April the 9th, 1945, and was transferred to Marbury Hall, a prisoner of war camp in Cheshire. Like all German POWs, Bert was put through a process of screening, a system of interrogation set up to determine the strength of a prisoner's belief in the Nazi cause.
You'd have white, grey or black. And Bert, being a paratrooper, he was automatically classified black, which is actually the worst sort of Nazi. The British authorities decided they weren't prepared to send back these Nazis to Germany, and they would re-educate them, and they gave them lessons in freedom and democracy and all that kind of thing. And as part of it, they showed them these horrific films of the concentration camps.
They took us into Nissenhaut, and we saw a film of Belsen, other concentration camps, and I couldn't believe it. And, you think, how can your own people do that to other human beings? It was terrible.
Two months later, Bert was transferred to POW Camp 50, a work camp at Ashton in Makerfield, a small town on the edge of South Lancashire's coal mining district. Bert was given the job of camp driver, and among his responsibilities, he regularly had to drive out to farms with a sergeant called Bloch to check on the condition of the prisoners who were working on the land. And what he saw surprised him.
The Sergeant Bloch would ask the German POW, "Are you happy with your farmer?" I could never fathom that. I could never grasp that. But, Christ almighty. They're a prisoner of war, and he's being asked, "Is the farmer treating you okay?" Just imagine that in Germany, it would have kicked you behind, if you would have done that.
It was while Bert was at Camp 50 that he received the first of many letters from his family in Bremen, desperate to know how he was and when he would be coming home. But Bert's life was about to take another unexpected turn.
So one day in 1946, there was a Scottish camp guard who was mad about football, and he organised a football match between two POW teams, which was a terrific success. And although a fraternisation ban was still on then, you couldn't talk to the locals, he did manage to let some local teams come along, and they played the POWs.